From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
The cattle industry is on alert.
So it can be really devastating to any animal that becomes infected with screwworm.
The latest on what's being done to keep a destructive fly out of the U.S. Clearing up some confusion when it comes to the future of clean fuel tax credits.
We're going to see some guidance come out from USDA.
The latest on what top industry leaders are telling them as ag retailers look ahead to 2025.
But the thing on top of there is tariffs.
We get answers as we go on the road to this year's Agricultural Retailers Association Conference in Houston, Texas, right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer. More farmers choose Pioneer brand corn because it delivers game-changing yields. Join a winning team. Pioneer brand corn. Your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Clint Griffiths coming to you from this year's annual Agricultural Retailers Association meeting in Houston, Texas. A big event every year that is very important to the entire ag industry. And how does it impact farmers? Well, because this is where the people who sell the things that farmers buy, everything from seed to nutrients, crop protection, feed and equipment, hear about the critical issues facing the industry and what they mean for their company's bottom line and eventually producers. Now we're talking about large and small retailers and everything in between across the entire country. Leaders here, they're optimistic about 2025, but understand with changes happening in Washington, there are both opportunities for agriculture, but also some things to watch out for in the next administration.
On the opportunity side, I think deregulation is going to be high on the list. So when President Trump was in the first time, we worked extensively with some of the agencies to try to kind of rationalize some of the regulations that had just gotten to be too oppressive. And so there's an opportunity to do that again. I can think of a couple in OSHA that probably went too far, or at least are not practical. So that's one, I think, on the opportunity side. On the watch out side, there's a pretty long list, but the thing on top of there is tariffs.
AgDay's coverage of the Agricultural Retailers Association Conference and Expo is brought to you by Verdesian. At Verdesian Life Sciences, we're unlocking the full potential of every nutrient for smarter, more efficient farming. Maximize your profitability with Verdesian. Learn more at vlsci.com.
And folks here received a new piece of the financial puzzle this week from USDA, the agency now forecasting net farm income this year at $140.7 billion. Now that's a drop of $6 billion from last year and down 22.6% from the peak set back in 2022. Now when you account for inflation, it's projected to drop $9.5 billion. Net cash farm income is pegged at $158.8 billion, down $1.8 billion from a year ago. With inflation factored in, it's down $5.7 billion. Now, despite this downturn, USDA's projections have actually improved slightly since September. While here in Houston, I spoke with the chairman of the ARA board who says they understand the challenges ahead for their clients in 2025.
It seems like, the farming community gets hit a little later than the rest of society, but they're starting to feel the squeeze. So we had some devaluation in the fertilizer side. We're holding steady pretty much for prices in the crop protection side, but we're also holding steady on the other end in commodity prices. And so really we're going to do what we can to raise as much as we can with as little as we can without robbing too much from the soil, just to get us past the point.
Now, Farm Journal is working to release its latest Ag Economist Monthly Monitor, and we continue to ask top economists about the state of the ag economy. And for the most part, they continue to paint a tough picture going into 2025. Now, we asked them if the U.S. ag economy is on the brink of a recession. 81% saying yes, while 56% now say ag is in a recession. Another concern for the industry, the potential for consolidation. 94% said the current financial environment for producers of low commodity prices and high input costs could accelerate consolidation in row crop operations. Purdue University's Michael Langenmeyer told Farm Journal's Tyne Morgan he definitely thinks agriculture is in a recession and that will force more consolidation on farms.
I want to point back to the 2014 to 2019 period. In that 2014-2015, when we started that most recent dip, in a recent period of low net farm income, we saw an acceleration of people getting out of the business. It's usually older individuals that say, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Now, Langemeyer says he doesn't think we are set to see a repeat of the 1980s. That's largely due to strong balance sheets with good working capital, but also continued strength in land values. He says while net cash flow is low, like it was back in the 80s, as long as land values stay relatively stable, farmers will continue to see strong balance sheets on the asset side. Lots of questions for the biofuels industry after the future of the new clean fuel tax credits, known as 45Z, was thrown into controversy. We told you yesterday, reports and questions swirled around whether the Biden administration would provide final guidance on the rule before leaving office in January. Experts here in Houston tell me, with clarity, we will see additional updates before Inauguration Day.
45Z is one of the most daring, most revolutionary changes in federal fuels tax policy since maybe the 1990s.
Tim Urban is a tax policy and legislative legal expert and lobbyist on behalf of the fuels industry. He believes there will be guidance that comes out in the next couple of weeks.
My expectation and my hope is that we will get guidance before the end of this calendar year that will provide enough information to taxpayers, to producers, the farmers that make the feedstocks, all the people involved in the supply chain, for them to participate in the credit on January 1. Now, I think the follow-up question is that guidance going to be a final tax regulation? The answer is no, right? So this guidance is going to be some sort of a notice that's going to give you just enough to sort of get down the road and start claiming tax credits, with the idea that there's still hundreds of questions left unanswered.
Iowa farmer and carbon-focused business owner Mitchell Hora spoke to contacts at USDA who assure him the work continues.
So talked with some of the folks in the administration who did reassure me we're going to see some guidance come out from USDA. We're going to see likely at least some guidance coming out from Treasury as well, kind of pointing to some of the USDA stuff, which is what I've been saying for months now. And 45Z at least not be dead in the water.
Hora says those updates may also come with an updated GREET model, which is the framework the Department of Energy uses to assess the environmental impact of all stages in the supply chain and technology.
Some of my conversations yesterday, I did get some clarity that we are expecting a new GREET model, which I was expecting. I think they'll update that kind of annually. What I had heard is expanded practices, no bundles, but probably not the actual GREET feedstock calculator like we know it today, but additional practices with some type of carbon reduction for each of the practices.
Hora and Urban agree there won't be time to fully finalize the rules before a new administration and Congress take office.
That the eventual disposition of everything regarding 45Z is going to basically land into the lap of President Trump's administration, President-elect Trump, and the 119th Congress, which is the Congress that will be sworn in 2025. So the story's not over. As a matter of fact, not only is it not over, but it's entering a new, even more, dynamic phase where everything that occurred in the last couple of years is going to be reevaluated by a different group of people.
Well, it's expected to be in the 60s here in Houston. A blast of cold air has its sights on the mid-Atlantic and southeast. Meteorologist Jack Van Meter takes a closer look for us.
Polar air is continually moving into the United States, and as we can see, highlighted by those pink and actual dark purples there. Take a look at these feel-like temperatures to start off the morning. -10 is that feel-like temperature in Chicago, and -11 out there in Minneapolis. And as I put this in motion, look and see how this cold air is really starting to permeate deep into the southern parts of the country as well. Atlanta is going to feel like 23 degrees. Richmond, Virginia there at 21 as well. So again, very, very cold air to start off the week. St. Sault Marie sitting at 3 degrees. This is for the afternoon high temperatures, and that's as warm as it's going to feel. And because of these cold temperatures and that Arctic dry air moving into the country, we are starting to see some lake effect snow bands start to develop off of the Great Lakes just as well. And work continues to wrap up on this year's harvest. Dan Lewis of Gaston, Oregon, sharing this picture with us, saying he really enjoys the calm, crisp, and cold mornings to finish up drying his corn. Well, it's just absolutely wonderful to see, and I'll have more in your forecast coming right up.
Sustainable Farming Week is brought to you by Neogen. Prioritizing herd health and embracing genomic testing are key steps toward maximizing your operation's success. Stay ahead of the curve, invest in your herd's health, and uncover their full potential.
We continue our look at Sustainable Farming Week. Sustainability practices can provide a new revenue stream for farmers using reduced tillage, planting pollinator habitat, or using prescribed grazing. Many firms are helping connect farmers that are sequestering carbon with companies and supply chains looking to lower their carbon footprint. Now, when this happens, farmers can create another revenue stream. Now, that's true for producers who've been using those regenerative practices for the last 30 years, but also new innovators.
When it comes to certain things like soil health practices, there are certain programs that prefer new adopters or certain programs that maybe compensate a little bit higher for that. But as the space evolves, there's more opportunities for folks that have been doing soil health practices for a very long time to be engaged.
Now, he says early carbon offset programs were very strict on the specific point in time that sustainability practices had to be implemented, but there are many new programs that provide opportunities for those early adopters. Coming up, South Korea made a flash buy of U.S. soybean oil, but was it enough to pull the soy complex up? We'll have the very latest coming up. And what is the U.S. doing to prevent New World screwworm from entering the U.S.? The latest coming up in our Drovers Report.
Sustainable Farming Week is sponsored by John Deere. Your land, your brand. Technology, equipment, and support to help you farm better now and generations from now.
Well, grain and livestock futures mostly lower on Wednesday with the exception of wheat, and Dave Chatterton is back to discuss markets. Let's talk about the risk off that we saw on Wednesday. Where did that come from?
Yeah, Michelle, I think it's just the sentiment of the marketplace is not in a very good spot here at the moment. We got a new contract low in wheat today. We've got soybeans bumping back against their contract lows, or certainly within 5 to 7 cents of those lows, and making another move to the downside. Things are a little bit oversold on the charts here. We're lacking any kind of really bullish impetus to go from. We're, I think, looking at a situation in the soybean complex where the discounts that are forming in the South American offers for February, March, and April are anywhere between 65 and 80 cents below current U.S. offers, and a pretty compelling sign that business is quickly going to switch to South America here after the first of the year. It looks like most of the consumers and users have some coverage out through, maybe the middle or to the end of January, and are going to bridge the gap there. In the wheat, I think very disappointing action here that we weren't able to react to, the change in the Russian quota or the reduction in the Russian quota. We've got a little bit of excessive rainfall in parts of eastern Australia that's hurting quality, and none of that has seemed to matter here as the export offers remain, at pretty discounted levels coming out of the Black Sea. And just, seeing the market act the way it does, a little bit disappointing to the traders here. Corn kind of caught in that, acting maybe a little bit better than the other two, if you will, in the bigger picture on the chart, but still not finding a lot of upside traction.
So, Dave, we're getting into the end of the year. We're getting into lighter holiday trade. We don't have a lot of big bullish news to help any of the grain markets. So do you feel like there's more downside risk to the grain trade?
Well, I think certainly there are a number of producers who are getting more anxious by the day. They're sitting on, stored or unpriced grain, and we're not getting much of a recovery here, typically in a seasonal fashion. We talked a little bit about that earlier, but, if we don't get much of a reaction by the middle of December, it's up to guidance from the South American crop prospects to kind of get us there. And right now, those crop prospects seem to be improving or getting bigger. So I'm not necessarily, overly bearish from current prices. I'm just lacking the reason that we're going to find a new buyer to come into this marketplace.
Thanks for joining us, Dave Chatterton with Strategic Farm Marketing. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
Here's a look at our radar picture for this morning. As we can see, big clipper system actually up to our east there. As we can see, moving off the coast there, bringing a lot of folks the chance to see some flurries and actually some accumulating snow as well. As we make our way down south, we can say the Gulf is starting to push up just a little bit of moisture as well in places like Alabama and Mississippi too. As I put this in motion, something is going to be abundantly clear, and that's actually going to be high pressure that will be setting in and really clearing out all chances of cloud cover, which in turn means no chances of rain pretty much for the central part of the country. We can take a look at that. My goodness, very, very clear skies out there. But take a look at this. Again, going to be a side effect of that cold air moving in. The lake effect snow machines of the Great Lakes starting to fire up as well. And also, as we move throughout the weekend, we start to see our next weather makers starting to move on shore. First off the Pacific Northwest, we can see there is a low pressure system that is turning off there. And also, we get some more Gulf moisture moving into Texas and more Canadian cold air that's going to be associated with a larger snow system to end the week. So something to obviously keep in mind. Here's our snowfall estimate throughout the rest of the week. So let's go ahead and zoom in on the East Coast as well. And as we can see, most of the snow is actually going to be associated with those lake effect snow showers. Now, we're not looking at major events much like we did last week or a couple weeks ago, especially out there in Buffalo, but a lot of folks are just going to be looking at a dusting of snow to end the week. Story City, Iowa, high of 21 degrees and a low of 11 degrees. Alliance, Nebraska, 46 degrees and a low of 20 degrees. And Bozeman, New York, 31 degrees, low of 20 degrees.
We've been keeping you updated on this. A positive detection of New World screwworm in a cow in the southern Mexico state of Chiapas. AgDay's Michelle Rook is continuing to track this, and Michelle, U.S. officials are working hard to keep it out of this country.
New World screwworm has not been detected in the U.S. since the 1960s. However, a case in southern Mexico on November 22nd prompted USDA to essentially close the border to Mexican cattle imports. Now, the news sent feeder cattle prices higher, but without any detectable spread, the market is gearing up for a reopening of the border sooner rather than later. USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service has heightened import restrictions on cattle and animal products from Mexico and intensified efforts in Central America to contain the spread of New World screwworm. Animal health experts say it's warranted as it's a significant threat to U.S. animal health.
And so it can have a huge impact. So certainly an economic impact because it decreases the health and wellness of our livestock, certainly thinking about loss of animal use, and certainly thinking about our wildlife populations that could be decimated by this disease.
The pest can infest any warm-blooded animal, including humans, and it's carried by flies.
And so the screwworm fly lies its eggs in an open wound on the animal, and then these larvae or worms just eat the flesh of that animal.
Cozil advises producers to monitor herds, especially in southern cattle production areas, and use preventative measures, including sterile fly introduction or animal health products. However, it looks like the case is isolated. So when will the border restrictions ease for Mexican cattle and product imports?
So recent reports from APHIS that have come out even this week, we talk about that the border is going to open after Christmas time, 1st of January. We're working really hard to set up some pre-export pins that APHIS will go in and okay. And APHIS is feeling very good about the protocols that are being set in place.
Market analysts say when the border reopens, it may hurt cattle prices in the south more than the north.
So yeah, they could break a little bit, but I think the reality of the deal is it looks like there's enough people out there that believe that ownership is the key when it comes to having some cattle around them, as tight supplies are very, very tight of this kind of animal, this yearling type steer. And, that's going to still put a prop underneath the thing because the cash index is so strong.
And so the price impact will likely be short-lived. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Still ahead, what has gotten into the pig population lately? A look at another wild chase where police tried to bring home the bacon in the country. Now, what is it lately with pigs getting loose? We told you last month about one of those little oinkers breaking free in Tacoma, Washington, and police going on a wild chase to capture it. And now it's happened again, this time in a Utah neighborhood. Several officers working in tandem to try and corral the porky perp, but one officer went full bore into a sprint only to take a tumble when he attempted to make the tackle. Officers did eventually catch up to the pig, named, of course, Wilbur. You may remember Wilbur from the story of Charlotte's Web. Now, clearly, he was just looking for a friend to play with him. And that's all the time we have this morning. We'll have more from the Agricultural Retailers Association here in Houston, Texas tomorrow. Thanks for watching. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.